You know, there's a reason heroes always pay a price. They have convictions. It's the primary thing that sets them apart from all the others, because all heroes, in order to be heroes, have to have convictions for which they're willing to sacrifice, maybe even die. You know, having convictions is one of the most noble things a human can do. It's evidence that we're not just animals, but we are indeed made in the image of God himself. Because with convictions, we're doing moral reasoning. We're not just, answering a question about which thing is more efficient or which things, might get us the best results, but we're asking which thing is right. Convictions acknowledge that we find ourselves not just in a physical universe, but in a world made by a righteous God who has given us a conscience. And that conscience perceives our existence in moral and ethical terms as well as physical. It's the highest and most God-like level of our existence. We sit enthroned as the Lord of our own value system. We are the master of our actions. We are the controller of our own free will thinking. And we are thinking about what we believe and what we don't believe, what we're going to allow ourselves to do and what we must never do. The word convictions comes from a Latin word, convincere, to overcome, to prove wrong, to conquer. There's something inherently victorious about a conviction. It isn't just a belief that you hold casually. It's a belief that has conquered all your doubts. It has overcome the alternatives. And you arrive at convictions through some kind of inner struggle, a contest. And those convictions emerge triumphant. That's why I think it's so beautiful. Now, to have convictions is both a privilege and it's a burden. It's a privilege because it's completely up to you and me to have convictions or not. In a world that values tolerance above truth, actually standing for something makes you a target. So the world will make you pay for having convictions. And that's exactly how you know they're worth having. Hi, I'm Chuck Quinley. Welcome to the Grounded Podcast. We're building stable lives that are anchored in Jesus while the world shakes. And this season is called Read Jesus Everything. We're cutting through 2,000 years of tradition, theology, and division to rediscover the Jesus of the Gospels so we can know him, receive his life, and join his mission to save the world. Now, over the past 3 episodes, we've been exploring the pain at the heart of the current faith crisis. We talked about the quiet exodus, millions leaving the church. Number 2, we talked about the paradox that you can be drawn to Jesus while being repelled by Christianity. And we talked, number 3, about the slow erosion of energy, ministry, burnout, and exhaustion that's taking place at record levels. Today, we're completing Act 1, the pain, by talking about our convictions. Now, this is really important in our current discussion because if you're on this journey, if you're questioning and deconstructing and reconstructing your faith and you're searching for an authentic faith, well, that's hopefully because you have convictions. You believe something deeply. You are not willing to settle for a version of Christianity that does not align with Jesus. You're just not willing to go along with the crowd and just keep doing what everyone else is doing. And that conviction is both a gift to you and a burden. It's a privilege, but it's pain. So let's talk about it. But here's what I've learned from 4 decades in the ministry. The only people who bring change are people who have convictions and they are willing to pay the price for them. Today we honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. because he had convictions about justice and equality. He was willing to sacrifice for those convictions, and I respect him highly. Mother Teresa had convictions about the level at which we are called to serve the poor, and she was willing to endure tension with Catholic hierarchy over her proposals. William Tyndale had a conviction that every human has a right to read the Bible in their own language, and this cost him his own life. You know, a conviction is not the same thing as an opinion. An opinion is something flexible. You can and should change your opinion as you get new information. But a conviction, that's your inner foundation. It's a core belief. It's a value. Convictions are non-negotiable. These are the hills you're willing to die on. They're the truths you will not compromise, even when it's uncomfortable, even if it's going to cost you something. Now, to have convictions is a privilege because it gives your life a number of things. Number one, maybe most importantly, meaning. The key to having a life of meaning and purpose is knowing the reason for your own existence. I mean, you can't know your purpose until you know your why and then live by it. This is the only way to a life that has any meaning. So if you are floundering in your life and you can't figure yourself out, this is where you start. Find your central convictions because they give us our center. And then we can focus our energies and we can build our life around these convictions. Through this, we'll find our purpose. Your purpose comes from that for which you are willing to sacrifice yourself. So when you know your convictions and you follow up by sacrificing this little short life of ours, it gives us the spine of our life. You know, without convictions, we may survive, but we're not really living as a human can live. We're just reacting like animals. We're moving from impulse to impulse, avoiding pressure, seeking comfort. Our life cannot have a direction, a spine, a purpose without a set of convictions. They let us live towards something greater than ourselves that demands something out of us. And we invest our energies and we burn our days toward those higher ends. And then at the end of our life, our convictions, if we live them out, will define us and create the message we leave behind with our life. So when you believe something deeply, your life has a purpose. You're not just drifting through life, reacting to circumstances. You are living intentionally because you're guided by principles that matter to you. You are choosing, you're driving your life according. It's like we're navigating by a higher heavenly set of principles. And as we live this way, we reflect the nobility that God has given to humans. We are living as the image of God. These convictions will give us a reason to get up in the morning, keep going when things get hard, and stick with it. Purpose comes from convictions. Secondly, convictions will give you direction. They are our life's compass. When you're faced with a decision, your convictions help you know which way to go. You know, should I take this job? Should I stay in this relationship? Should I speak up or stay silent? It's your convictions that provide clarity in a confusing world of endless choices. So if you repeatedly follow your convictions, it will give your life a direction. The convictions are sort of like if your life is an arrow, your convictions are the shaft in the arrow of your life. So when you know what you believe, you're no longer paralyzed by confusion and indecision. You can move forward. You can go confidently into a future, ignoring all those endless options and choosing only the ones that match your convictions. It's a privilege, third, because it shapes your identity. You know, there's a coherence and a predictability that will settle into who you are as a person if you follow convictions. This predictable pattern eventually forms the definition of who you are to yourself and also to others. Because our convictions are like an unyielding blade that shapes who we are, how we live, what we make ourselves do, and what we forbid ourselves from doing. They're not just beliefs, they're part of your identity. You know, when we say to somebody, I'm a follower of Jesus, we're not just stating a fact, we're declaring our identity, like I am a disciple. That's who I am. Your convictions define you. Number 4, community. Convictions connect you to others who share them. When you find the people who believe what you believe and value what you value and are willing to sacrifice for what you're willing to sacrifice, you've found your tribe. They will empower you to stand firm with your community in those difficult circumstances. When you believe deeply in something, you can endure opposition, criticism, and hardship because you are rooted in these principles that matter more to you than comfort or social approval. And your community gives you the strength and the security to push forward with those values. Number 5, legacy. Because when you live by convictions, you will leave a mark on your family and on your world. You won't just float through life, you will shape life, and you will influence the next generation. You're able to change the world because your life is grounded in something transcendent, and that will give you moral authority. Your convictions will outlive you. Now, this is the privilege of having convictions. It's a gift. It's what makes life worth living, but like everything valuable, it also comes at a cost. So what's the cost? Well, to have convictions is to pay a price, and here's what it costs. First, comfort. Convictions always demand something out of you. They create an obligation in you, and once you know what is right, you're responsible to act on it. Although it's going to be inconvenient, costly, uncomfortable, they actually introduce friction. They make your life harder. But once you believe something, you're not just free to do whatever is easier or safer for you. Your convictions disturb your comfort by putting you in tension. And now you have to constantly navigate a world that is disagreeable with your convictions. And one of the worst parts of this is having to deal with the gap that always exists between what we believe and how we actually live. And this gap is really painful because our convictions won't let us hide from ourselves. They won't let us give ourselves a pass to not follow those convictions if they're true convictions. So you lose your comfort. Second thing that they'll cost you is they'll cost you socially. There is a social cost. When you have convictions, not everyone's going to like them. You're going to be frustrating to some people. They'll find you too rigid, too judgmental, too extreme. They'll say you're making everything so serious, or everything with you is about religion. You may actually lose friends and opportunities. You'll be misunderstood because when you stand for something, you inevitably stand apart from someone else who doesn't have that conviction. Now, for creatures who value belonging, that really hurts. The third thing it may cost you is your life, because throughout history, people with convictions have suffered the loss of reputation, relationships, comfort, security, and more. Followers of Jesus have often paid the ultimate price. Stephen was stoned to death. Peter was crucified upside down. Paul was beheaded. Millions of Christians in the last 100 years have been martyred for their faith. And even today, in many parts of the world, to follow Jesus can cost you your life. So here's a question. Are convictions worth it? Well, let me tell you a story that might help answer that question. It's a true story. I want to tell you a story. I'm going to call her name Mariam. Mariam lives in Iran, where converting from Islam to Christianity is illegal and it's punishable by death. Mariam grew up in a devout Muslim family. She prayed 5 times a day, fasted during Ramadan. She followed all the rules. But she always felt like something was missing, like there was this distance between her and God that she could not bridge. And then through a secret house church, she heard about Jesus. She heard that God loved her so much that he sent his son to die for her, and she became a follower of Jesus. But Mariam's story illustrates something profound, and that is conviction costs, but it's also the most valuable thing you can have. Because Mariam's husband demanded that she renounce Christ, and she refused. Then he took her before a judge, and he called for a divorce, and also that the judge would strip her of all contact with their daughter. It was a horrible test. You follow Jesus and lose your child, or you go back to Islam and renounce your relationship with Jesus. So she told the judge that her connection with Jesus was real. And he told her just to say the words without even meaning them in her heart. And he would not take her child away from her. But she said, well, what are my words then? God is listening to my words. Even now, I cannot deny Jesus. The judge sighed, granted the divorce, and then stripped her of her child. She had to flee Iran for her own safety, and all she could do now was pray for her daughter and trust Jesus to support her in her convictions. She had to believe that just like the Lord reached out to her, he would reach out to her daughter one day. Over the years, she was finally allowed to speak to her daughter by telephone. And when the child was old enough, she also became devoted to Jesus, left Iran, and joined her mother. She said her mother's convictions were like a light that guided her from halfway around the world. Now, I'm so glad that story has a happy ending, but the point would be the same even if it did not. Convictions are the power that brings the change to our world. Well, here's a few more things I've learned about people living with conviction. Number one, you need to know what you believe and why. Don't just inherit your convictions from your parents, your pastor, your culture. Examine them, test them, make sure they're yours. Because when the cost comes, and it will, you need to know that your convictions are worth it. Number two, be willing to stand alone. There will be times when you're the only one standing for what is right, when everyone else is going along with the crowd, and you will have to stand firm, and that's lonely. But remember, you're not really alone. Jesus is with you. And throughout history, the people who changed this world were the ones who have stood alone first, because that's what leaders are. Number three, you need to count the cost, but don't let the cost stop you. Jesus said, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. He did not sugarcoat it. Following him will cost you. But he also said, whoever loses their life for me will find it. The cost is real, but the reward is greater. Fourth, I would say find your people. It's really hard to do this alone. You need a community of people who share your convictions, who will encourage you, challenge you, and stand with you. Find them. Build deep relationships with them, because conviction is sustained in your community. And this is why the whole idea of being the church is so important versus attending church. But being church, being in a faith community that is faithful to its convictions, this is crucial. And it's why that part, as a lot of people are frustrated with the entertainment focused experience they're having on Sundays, and they say, I don't want to go to church. You need to find something that is more like what you're seeking. But we need community. It's a part of the Jesus way. Speaking of that, number 5, if you're going to walk with convictions, you just got to keep your eyes on Jesus. Because when the cost feels too high, and when you're tempted to compromise, and when you're wondering if it's even worth it, just look at Jesus. He had convictions. He had convictions about the kingdom of God, and he was willing to die for his convictions. And because he did, we have hope today. We have life. We have a future. And finally, don't give up because of your own failure to live up to your convictions. Simon Peter became the great early leader of the persecuted followers of Jesus. And he was known to have a great marriage. He and his wife were inseparable. Despite the dangers they both faced for doing it, they roamed the Middle East, encouraging the people of God. And all of this he built after one of the most extreme moral failures in the history of the church, denying that he even knew Jesus 3 times. But people with convictions get back up. Even when they fail to live up to their own standards, they get back up, because we are serving the God of the second chance. So that's the privilege and the cost of having convictions. Now, the reason we need to talk about convictions on this podcast is that one of the reasons millions of people are walking away from institutional Christianity is that the form of religion they're experiencing does not align with their convictions about the way of Jesus. They're voting with their feet to walk away. And that's one step, perhaps, but moving to a more satisfactory way of following Jesus is going to take a lot more effort than just leaving. I mean, it's a lot easier to just go to church, sit, and follow along. So, if a person is just leaving Christianity because they got mad about something, or somebody wasn't nice enough to them, or they think that the failure of that person is reason for them to walk away, well, then that's all up to them. But I'm convinced there are people out there who are walking away because of a deep set of personal convictions concerning Jesus. You see, to really be a disciple of Jesus requires you to have convictions about him. So here we are. We're at the end of Act 1, the pain. And we've talked about the quiet exodus as millions are leaving the church. We talked about the paradox of faith, how you can be drawn to Jesus the person and repelled by a form of Christian religion. We talked about the ministry burnout and exhaustion that comes from trying to prop up a failing system you no longer believe in. And now we've talked about the privilege and the cost of convictions, what it means to stand for something in a world that doesn't want you to. So we've acknowledged the pain, we've named it, we've sat with it, but we can't stay here. And that is not the direction that we're going to follow, because pain without a diagnosis is just suffering. And diagnosis without a solution, that's just a recipe for despair. So starting in the next episode, we're going to move into what I'm going to call the noise. We're going to work to diagnose the problem we're facing. We'll look honestly at what's gone wrong with Christianity and why so many people are feeling disconnected from it. We're going to talk about multiple voices, the chaos of having so many authoritative teachers, and yet no central authority rested in Jesus. We're going to talk about Christianity becoming the everything religion, the buffet, where everyone can just, pick and choose whatever they want for their Christianity. We're going to talk about the doctrinal chaos and theological anarchy that results from this approach. Talk forth about our malleable Messiah, how we've recreated a Jesus in our own image to support our causes. We're going to talk about the difference in influence and authority and why Jesus has been subordinated in Christian systems all over the world, despite all of our songs and nice words that we say about him. So this next part might be a little bit uncomfortable, but we're trying to get to a diagnosis. We're not going to belabor it, and we're not looking for a million things done wrong, but we are going to try to define the central problem that has introduced this new corrupting code into the Jesus movement. We're going to have to be honest about what is broken. But here's the promise. Diagnosis must lead to solution, and the solution is coming, and I will already tell you what it is. Re-Jesus everything. And we'll get into that, unpack that, what it is to re-Jesus everything, how we can rebuild our own personal faith, rebuild our communities, rebuild the circle of Christianity that we're going to live our lives in. One thing I hope that happens out of all of this is that we build for ourselves, my friend, a robust community of faith online. Online is a normal part of our life now, and the average person is going to spend something between 6 and 8 hours every day in screen time one way or another. So this is a normal way of discussing things, finding out the facts, getting guidance. We turn to our phones and we Google, or nowadays we don't bother with that, we AI our questions and let AI go get us the best of the internet and create a little report for us. This is where we do deep work anymore. And so I want to enter into this discussion with you This topic is very close to my heart and close to many of my friends' hearts. Some of us are losing our children from the faith, and we are deeply disturbed about it. And some of us are very close to leaving Christianity ourselves. And we need the support of a group where we can process our thoughts openly. Now, I'm going to be deeply engaged in the comment section at Quinley.com and on the YouTube channel, Chuck Quinley, where these podcast episodes will be aired. I will try to monitor the social media channels, but they move too quickly. So if you want to get into deep discussion, please come to Quinley.com. And that's where I'm going to put most of my energies, okay? Here's our discussion question for the week. What conviction has cost you the most, and was it worth it? And I would encourage you in your personal devotional time to let this be the week that you ask God to help you honestly list maybe 3 to 5 convictions. I don't mean write down every doctrine of the Bible that you believe, but I mean convictions about who you are and what is your place in this world. Like what convictions are you going to live by? And if we can begin with that, that'll help us to build our life on top of that. All right. So until next time, I'm Chuck Quinley, and let's get grounded together.